The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base in Coronado, California. As Petty Officer Second Class, Sarah Martinez carefully disassembled her M107 Barrett sniper rifle on the weathered wooden table. The weapon gleamed under the fluorescent lights of the armory, each component laid out with the precision that had been drilled into her during countless hours of training. Sarah had always been meticulous about her equipment, but today felt different. Today, she was preparing for something that would change everything. Sarah came from a small town in Texas where her father had taught her to shoot before she could properly ride a bicycle. Growing up on a ranch meant that firearms were tools, not weapons, and respect for them was paramount. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had instilled in her the importance of discipline, accuracy, and responsibility. When Sarah announced her intention to join the Navy and eventually try out for the SEALs, her family was both proud and terrified. Women had only recently been allowed into combat roles, and the SEAL community remained one of the most challenging and exclusive military units in the world. The path to where she now stood had been grueling. Basic training had been tough, but SEAL training had pushed her beyond every limit she thought she had. The physical demands were relentless, but it was the mental challenges that truly tested her resolve. During Hell Week, when candidates were pushed to their absolute breaking point, Sarah had found strength she never knew existed. While others around her rang the bell and quit, she pressed on, driven by a determination that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her soul. Her instructors had noticed her exceptional marksmanship skills early on. During weapons training, while other candidates struggled to hit targets at standard distances, Sarah was consistently placing shots with surgical precision. Her natural ability, combined with her unwavering focus and dedication to perfection, made her stand out among her peers. The senior instructors began paying special attention to her progress, and whispers began circulating about the quiet woman who could outshoot most of the male candidates. The M107 Barrett had become her signature weapon. The semi-automatic anti-material rifle was a beast of a gun, weighing nearly 30 pounds and capable of engaging targets at extreme distances. Most people struggled with the weapon's size and recoil, but Sarah had developed an almost intimate relationship with it. She understood its quirks, its capabilities, and its limitations better than anyone else in her unit. Hours spent in practice had taught her how to read wind patterns, calculate for bullet drop, and account for the countless variables that could affect a long-distance shot. As she cleaned each component with methodical precision, Sarah reflected on the mission briefing she had received the previous evening. Intelligence had identified a high-value target in a remote mountainous region, and standard engagement protocols would put innocent civilians at risk. The target would only be vulnerable for a brief window, and the shot would need to be taken from an unprecedented distance. The mission planners had initially considered it impossible until someone mentioned Sarah's exceptional abilities. Admiral James Richardson, the commanding officer overseeing special operations in the region, had been skeptical when her name was first mentioned. He was old-school military, having served for over 3 decades and commanded respect from everyone under his command. Richardson had earned his reputation through decisive leadership and an unwavering commitment to mission success, but he was also known for his traditional views about combat roles. The idea of sending a relatively new female operator on such a critical mission didn't sit well with him initially. The briefing room had been tense when Sarah was called in to present her assessment of the mission parameters. Maps covered the walls, showing the mountainous terrain where the target would be located. Satellite imagery revealed the complexity of the shot, with multiple elevation changes, unpredictable wind patterns, and a target window measured in seconds rather than minutes. As Sarah studied the intelligence data, her mind was already calculating angles, distances, and environmental factors that would affect the shot. Richardson watched her carefully as she examined the mission details. He had heard about her training scores and her reputation among the instructors, but seeing her in person for the first time, he found it difficult to reconcile the quiet, unassuming woman before him with the legendary marksmanship skills he had been told about. Sarah stood barely 5 feet 6 inches tall, with an athletic build that spoke to her rigorous training but hardly the imposing presence one might expect from an elite sniper. The target location was situated in a valley surrounded by steep mountains, making approach from most angles impossible. The only viable shooting position was from a ridge nearly 2,800 meters away, a distance that pushed the absolute limits of even the most advanced sniper systems. Weather reports indicated variable wind conditions, and the target would only be exposed for approximately 15 seconds during a scheduled transfer between buildings. Sarah spent the evening studying topographical maps, weather patterns, and ballistic calculations. She reviewed every piece of intelligence multiple times, memorizing details that others might consider insignificant. The temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and even the rotation of the Earth would all play roles in determining whether her shot would find its mark. This wasn't just about pulling a trigger, it was about understanding and compensating for physics itself. Her teammates had offered support and encouragement, but Sarah knew that ultimately, the success or failure of this mission would rest entirely on her shoulders. The weight of that responsibility was both terrifying and exhilarating. Everything she had trained for, every hour spent perfecting her craft, had led to this moment. As she finished cleaning her rifle and began the reassembly process, Sarah felt a calm determination settle over her. The weapon came together in her hands like an old friend returning home. Each component fit perfectly into place, and the familiar weight of the assembled rifle brought comfort and confidence. Sarah had always believed that a sniper's most important tool wasn't the rifle or the scope, but the mind that guided them. Tonight, as she prepared for what would become the shot heard around the special operations community, her mind was focused and clear. Admiral Richardson would later admit that he had his doubts about the mission's feasibility. The distance alone made it one of the longest attempted sniper shots in military history, and the environmental challenges seemed almost insurmountable. However, as he reviewed Sarah's training records and spoke with her instructors, he began to understand why everyone spoke of her with such respect and admiration. The night before the mission, Sarah barely slept. She wasn't nervous about the shot itself, but rather about all the variables beyond her control. Weather could change, intelligence could be wrong, or unforeseen circumstances could arise. All she could do was prepare to the best of her ability and trust in her training. As dawn approached, she knew that in less than 24 hours, she would either make history or face the consequences of failure. The armory was quiet as Sarah completed her final preparations. Tomorrow would test everything she had learned and determine whether all those who believed in her had placed their faith wisely. The M107 sat before her, cleaned and ready, a precision instrument waiting for its moment to sing across the mountains and deliver justice with surgical accuracy. The helicopter blades cut through the pre-dawn darkness as Sarah and her support team flew toward the insertion point. The rhythmic thumping of the rotors created a steady soundtrack to her final mental preparations. Strapped securely in her seat, the M107 Barrett rifle case beside her, Sarah reviewed the mission parameters one last time. The target zone lay in a remote mountainous region where traditional air support would be ineffective and ground assault would risk civilian casualties. Her spotter, Staff Sergeant Miguel Santos, sat across from her, studying the same topographical maps they had memorized over the past 3 days. Santos was a veteran with 12 years of experience, and his weathered face bore the quiet confidence of someone who had been in countless dangerous situations. Initially skeptical about working with the team's newest member, he had quickly developed respect for Sarah's methodical approach and exceptional skills. Their partnership had evolved during training exercises where Sarah's precision had consistently exceeded expectations. The insertion point was located 15 kilometers from their intended shooting position, requiring a challenging nighttime hike through treacherous mountain terrain. Intelligence reports indicated minimal enemy presence in the area, but the team couldn't afford to take any chances. Every movement would need to be calculated and silent, as discovery would not only compromise the mission, but potentially trigger a response that could endanger innocent lives in the target area. As the helicopter descended toward the landing zone, Sarah felt the familiar pre-mission calm settling over her. This mental state had become second nature during her training, a focused clarity that allowed her to process information and make critical decisions without emotional interference. Her breathing was steady, her heart rate controlled, and her mind sharp. The months of preparation had led to this moment, and she was ready. The insertion went smoothly, with the team quickly disappearing into the darkness as the helicopter departed. Moving in single file through the rocky terrain, they maintained radio silence while navigating by night vision and GPS coordinates. Sarah carried her rifle case and essential equipment, the additional weight distributed carefully to maintain balance on the uneven ground. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated to avoid detection. The mountain landscape was both beautiful and treacherous. Steep cliffs, loose rock formations, and narrow passages required constant attention to prevent injury or noise that could compromise their position. Santos led the way, his experience evident in his ability to find the safest routes while maintaining their timeline. Behind him, Sarah moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent countless hours training in similar terrain. During their ascent, Sarah's mind was constantly calculating and recalculating the variables that would affect her shot. The weather conditions were within acceptable parameters, but mountain weather could change rapidly. Wind patterns at their current elevation might be completely different from conditions at the shooting position. Temperature variations could affect both the rifle's performance and ballistic calculations. Every factor would need to be reassessed once they reached their destination. The support team included communications specialist Petty Officer Lisa Chun, who would maintain contact with command and coordinate with intelligence assets monitoring the target area. Chun had worked with various SEAL teams for 5 years and understood the critical importance of accurate, timely information. Her equipment would provide real-time updates on target movement and environmental conditions that could affect mission success. Explosive Ordnance Specialist Petty Officer Marcus Thompson completed the team. His role was primarily security and contingency planning, but his presence provided additional confidence that they could handle unexpected complications. Thompson had served 3 combat deployments and possessed the calm professionalism that made him ideal for high-stakes operations. His respect for Sarah had grown during their joint training exercises, where her focus and determination had impressed even the most skeptical team members. As they climbed higher, the air grew thinner and colder. The team had prepared for these conditions, but the physical demands of the ascent while carrying heavy equipment tested everyone's endurance. Sarah's training regimen had prepared her well for such challenges, and she maintained steady progress without showing signs of fatigue. Her teammates noted her resilience and steady breathing, qualities that reinforced their confidence in her abilities. The planned shooting position was located on a ridge that provided clear sight lines to the target area while offering concealment and multiple escape routes. Getting there required navigating a particularly challenging section of loose rock and steep inclines. The team moved carefully, with Santos testing each handhold and foothold before committing their full weight. One mistake could result in serious injury or create noise that would alert enemy forces to their presence. During a brief rest stop, Sarah opened her rifle case and conducted a detailed inspection of her equipment. The M107 had traveled well, with no visible damage or debris that could affect its performance. She checked the scope mounting, verified the 0 setting, and ensured that all components were properly secured. This ritual helped her maintain the mental connection with her weapon while confirming that everything remained in perfect condition. Shin received updated intelligence indicating that the target remained on schedule for the planned appearance. Weather reports showed stable conditions for the next several hours, with minimal cloud cover and light winds. The information provided additional confidence that mission parameters remained favorable, but Sarah knew that conditions could change rapidly in mountainous terrain. As dawn approached, the team reached their objective area. The shooting position offered an impressive view of the target valley, but the distance was even more intimidating in person than it had appeared on satellite imagery. Through her scope, Sarah could barely make out the buildings where the target would appear. The shot would require every bit of skill and experience she had developed over years of training and practice. Santos began setting up his spotting equipment while Sarah prepared her shooting position. The ground was rocky and uneven, requiring careful positioning to ensure stability and comfort during what could be an extended wait. She arranged her gear methodically, creating a stable shooting platform that would minimize external influences on her accuracy. Every detail mattered when attempting a shot at such extreme range. The morning air was crisp and clear, with minimal atmospheric disturbance that could affect bullet trajectory. Sarah began her final ballistic calculations, factoring in temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and estimated wind conditions. The data would be refined as they gathered more specific environmental information, but preliminary calculations confirmed that the shot was theoretically possible with the right conditions and perfect execution. Admiral Richardson, monitoring the mission from the command center, felt a mixture of anticipation and concern as he tracked the team's progress. The stakes were enormous, with potential consequences that extended far beyond this single operation. Success would validate new tactical capabilities and potentially save innocent lives, while failure could have serious strategic implications. He found himself hoping that his initial skepticism about Sarah's assignment had been misplaced. As the sun rose higher, Sarah and her team settled into their positions for what would become one of the longest waits of their military careers. The target was expected to appear within a specific time window, but intelligence couldn't provide exact timing. They would need to remain alert and ready for hours, maintaining focus and readiness despite the mental and physical challenges of extended observation. The mountainous landscape around them was silent except for occasional whine through the rocks. Sarah lay behind her rifle, scope focused on the distant target area, while Santos monitored conditions and maintained communication with Chun. Thompson provided security, scanning their perimeter for any signs of discovery or threat. Each team member understood their role and the critical importance of flawless execution when the moment arrived. The hours stretched like elastic as Sarah maintained her position behind the M107, her eye periodically scanning through the powerful scope toward the distant valley. The target area remained quiet, with no indication of the activity that intelligence had predicted. Santos lay beside her, his spotting scope trained on the same location while monitoring wind indicators and environmental conditions that could affect the shot. The waiting was always the hardest part of any sniper mission, requiring mental discipline to maintain focus and readiness over extended periods. Chen's voice crackled softly through their communications equipment, providing regular updates from intelligence assets monitoring the situation. Satellite surveillance confirmed that vehicles were moving toward the target location, suggesting that the planned meeting would occur as anticipated. The information provided reassurance that their long journey and careful preparation would not be wasted, but Sarah knew that until the target actually appeared, anything could change. As the morning progressed, Sarah felt the familiar rhythm of her breathing and heartbeat settling into the calm pattern that preceded critical shots. Her body was comfortable and stable in the shooting position she had carefully arranged, with the rifle's bipod providing solid support on the rocky ground. Years of training had taught her to find this zone of focused concentration where external distractions faded away and only the shot mattered. Santos quietly called out wind readings from various indicators visible in the valley below. Dust patterns, vegetation movement, and smoke from cooking fires all provided clues about air currents that could affect bullet trajectory over the extreme distance. The wind conditions appeared relatively stable, but both operators knew that mountain weather could change without warning. They would need to make final adjustments based on conditions at the moment of the shot. The ballistic calculations Sarah had prepared showed that her bullet would take nearly 4 seconds to reach the target area, dropping over 40 feet during its flight path. Environmental factors could alter this trajectory significantly, making precise measurement and compensation critical to success. The margin for error at such extreme range was measured in inches, with any miscalculation potentially resulting in a complete miss or, worse, unintended consequences. Thompson maintained security from a position that allowed him to observe their immediate surroundings while staying out of Sarah's line of sight. His presence provided confidence that the team could focus entirely on the mission without worrying about external threats. His experience in hostile environments had taught him to read terrain and anticipate potential problems before they became critical issues. At 11:47 a.m., Chun received confirmation that vehicles had arrived at the target location. Through her scope, Sarah could see movement around the distant buildings, though individual figures remained too small to identify clearly. Santos adjusted his spotting equipment to gather more detailed information about wind conditions and target area activity. The moment they had prepared for was approaching rapidly. Sarah began her final equipment checks, verifying that her rifle remained properly zeroed and that all components were functioning correctly. The M107 felt comfortable and familiar in her hands, like an extension of her own body. She had fired thousands of rounds through this weapon during training and practice sessions, developing an intimate understanding of its performance characteristics and capabilities. Santos called out updated wind readings, indicating relatively calm conditions in the valley with slight crosswinds that would require minor compensation. Sarah adjusted her scope accordingly, making precise calculations that would account for the wind's effect on her bullet during its long flight. The adjustments were small, but critical, as even minor errors would be magnified over the extreme distance. At 12:03 p.m., Chen's voice carried urgent excitement as surveillance assets confirmed visual identification of the target. A figure matching the intelligence description had emerged from one of the buildings and was moving toward the scheduled meeting location. Sarah immediately focused her scope on the area, searching for the individual who had been described in their mission briefings. Through the powerful optics, Sarah could see figures moving near the buildings, but positive identification remained challenging due to the extreme distance and atmospheric conditions. Santos worked frantically with his spotting scope, trying to confirm target identity and provide Sarah with precise location information. The window of opportunity would be brief, measured in seconds rather than minutes. Sarah's breathing slowed to a controlled rhythm as she settled deeper into her shooting position. Her finger moved to the trigger guard, ready but not yet committed to the trigger itself. Years of training had taught her to remain patient until all conditions aligned perfectly. A hasty shot would almost certainly result in failure and could compromise the entire mission. Santos whispered confirmation that he had identified the target moving between buildings in a pattern consistent with intelligence predictions. The individual appeared to be following the anticipated schedule, suggesting that the brief exposure window would occur as planned. Sarah adjusted her scope's focus and verified her shooting position one final time. The target area showed increased activity as additional figures moved around the buildings. Sarah had to distinguish her specific target from others in the area, a challenging task made more difficult by distance and similar clothing worn by multiple individuals. Positive identification was critical, as the consequences of engaging the wrong target could be catastrophic for both the mission and innocent civilians. At 12:09 p.m., surveillance assets provided final confirmation of target identity and predicted movement. The individual would cross an open area between buildings in approximately 30 seconds, providing a brief window for engagement. Sarah felt her heart rate remain steady as she prepared for the shot that would define her career and potentially save countless lives. Santos called out final wind readings and confirmed range to target as 2,847 meters. Sarah made minute adjustments to her scope, compensating for the slight variations in environmental conditions since their arrival. The M107 was ready, her position was stable, and all external factors had been calculated and compensated for to the best of their ability. The target emerged from behind a building exactly as intelligence had predicted, moving at a steady pace toward the scheduled meeting location. Through her scope, Sarah could see the individual clearly enough to confirm identity according to the physical description provided in their briefings. This was the moment that everything had led to. Sarah's breathing stopped completely as her finger moved to the trigger. The crosshairs of her scope centered on the target with mechanical precision, compensating for all calculated variables. Time seemed to slow as she applied steady, increasing pressure to the trigger mechanism. The M107's safety had been disengaged, and the weapon was ready to fire. The rifle's report echoed across the mountainous terrain as Sarah fired the single shot that would travel nearly 3 kilometers to its target. The massive recoil pushed against her shoulder, but her position remained stable and controlled. Through her scope, she watched the bullet's vapor trail streak toward the distant valley while Santos tracked its flight path through his spotting equipment. For 4 long seconds, The bullet flew through thin mountain air, its trajectory affected by gravity, wind, temperature, and atmospheric pressure exactly as Sarah had calculated. The sound of the gunshot echoed off surrounding peaks, but, by then, the bullet was already approaching its target area. Sarah maintained her shooting position, ready to provide battle damage assessment and prepare for potential follow-up shots if necessary. Santos called out impact confirmation as the bullet found its mark with precision that exceeded even their most optimistic expectations. The target dropped immediately, struck with accuracy that eliminated any doubt about mission success. Sarah remained focused through her scope, gathering intelligence about the target area response while preparing for potential threats or complications. The shot had been perfect, traveling 2,847 meters to strike exactly where Sarah had aimed. Years of training, careful preparation, and flawless execution had combined to produce what would later be recognized as one of the longest confirmed sniper kills in military history. But, for Sarah, focused on mission completion and team safety, the immediate priority was confirming mission success and preparing for extraction. The extraction went smoothly, with the team moving quickly away from their shooting position before any response could be organized in the target area. Sarah disassembled her rifle with the same methodical precision she had used to prepare it, each component carefully secured for the journey back to base. The successful mission had eliminated a high-value target without collateral damage, achieving objectives that traditional methods could not have accomplished safely. During the helicopter ride back to base, Sarah remained quiet and focused, running through the mission details in her mind and considering lessons learned for future operations. Santos sat beside her, occasionally shaking his head in amazement at what he had witnessed. The shot had been perfect, but more impressive to him was Sarah's calm professionalism throughout the entire process. She had never shown doubt or hesitation, maintaining focus and confidence even under enormous pressure. Chun and Thompson were equally impressed by what they had observed. Both were experienced operators who had worked with many different snipers over their careers, but Sarah's performance had been extraordinary. The combination of technical skill, mental preparation, and flawless execution under pressure had exceeded everyone's expectations. They knew they had witnessed something special that would be remembered and discussed for years to come. Admiral Richardson waited anxiously at the base for confirmation of mission success. When initial reports came through confirming target elimination without civilian casualties, he felt a combination of relief and amazement. The shot had been attempted at a distance he had considered nearly impossible, yet Sarah had made it appear routine. His initial skepticism about her assignment now seemed foolish in light of her extraordinary achievement. The debriefing process was extensive, with intelligence officers and mission planners wanting detailed information about every aspect of the operation. Sarah provided thorough descriptions of her preparations, calculations, and execution of the shot, helping analysts understand how such an extreme-range engagement had been accomplished. Her methodical approach to documentation impressed everyone involved in the review process. Word of the successful mission spread rapidly through the special operations community. A confirmed kill at 2,847 meters represented one of the longest sniper shots in military history, achieved under challenging conditions by a relatively new operator. The achievement generated significant interest from training commands and tactical development units who wanted to understand the methods and techniques that had made such precision possible. Sarah found herself summoned to a formal meeting with Admiral Richardson 3 days after the mission. She expected a standard after-action review, but the Admiral's expression suggested something more significant was planned. Richardson had spent considerable time reviewing her training records, mission performance, and recommendations from her instructors and teammates. The woman sitting across from him bore little resemblance to his initial preconceptions about female operators in elite units. The Admiral began by acknowledging his initial doubts about the mission's feasibility and Sarah's assignment. He admitted that his traditional views about combat roles had influenced his early assessment, but her performance had forced him to reconsider long-held assumptions. The successful mission had not only achieved critical objectives, but had also demonstrated capabilities that could revolutionize certain aspects of special operations. Richardson explained that Sarah's achievement would likely receive formal recognition at the highest levels of military leadership. The shot itself was remarkable, but equally impressive was her professional preparation, execution under pressure, and conduct throughout the entire operation. Her performance reflected the highest standards of military excellence and would serve as an example for future operators regardless of gender or background. The meeting continued with discussions about Sarah's future assignments and potential roles in developing training programs for other snipers. Her experience and proven capabilities made her an ideal candidate for instructor positions where she could share knowledge and techniques with the next generation of operators. The military was eager to understand and replicate the methods that had made her successful. Sarah listened respectfully to the Admiral's comments while maintaining the same calm professionalism that had characterized her throughout the mission. Recognition and praise were appreciated, but her focus remained on continuous improvement and readiness for future challenges. She understood that this mission represented just one step in what she hoped would be a long and successful military career. Over the following weeks, detailed analysis of the mission provided valuable insights for tactical development and training programs. Sarah's ballistic calculations, environmental assessments, and execution techniques were studied by experts who wanted to understand how such precision had been achieved at extreme range. Her methodical approach to preparation became a model for other snipers facing similar challenges. The M107 rifle used for the mission was carefully examined to determine if equipment modifications or improvements could enhance performance for future long-range engagements. Sarah provided detailed feedback about the weapon's characteristics and her experience with its performance under extreme conditions. This information proved valuable for equipment specialists working on next-generation sniper systems. Training programs began incorporating lessons learned from Sarah's mission, particularly regarding preparation techniques and mental conditioning for extreme-range shots. Her approach to environmental assessment and ballistic calculation became standard curriculum for advanced sniper courses. Instructors emphasized the importance of methodical preparation and mental discipline in achieving success under pressure. Sarah's teammates from the mission also received recognition for their contributions to its success. Santos was credited with providing exceptional spotting support and wind assessment that had been critical to accurate shot placement. Chen's communication coordination and Thompson's security planning had enabled the team to focus entirely on mission objectives without distraction. The success of the mission had broader implications for special operations planning and tactics. Commanders began considering extreme-range sniper support for situations where traditional approaches were too risky or impractical. Sarah's achievement proved that such capabilities existed within current personnel and equipment when properly prepared and executed. Months later, Sarah received formal decoration for her exceptional performance during the mission. The ceremony was attended by senior military leaders who praised not only her technical achievement, but also her representation of the highest standards of military professionalism. Admiral Richardson personally presented the award, acknowledging that his initial doubts had been replaced by deep respect and admiration. Sarah's story became an inspiration for other women considering military service, particularly in combat roles that had traditionally been male-dominated. Her success demonstrated that excellence in military operations was determined by skill, preparation, and dedication rather than gender or physical characteristics. Training commands reported increased interest from female candidates seeking sniper and special operations training. The 2,847-meter shot remained a topic of discussion and study within the sniper community for years to come. Sarah's achievement represented not just individual excellence, but also the potential for pushing the boundaries of what was considered possible in military operations. Her legacy extended beyond the mission itself to influence training, tactics, and attitudes throughout the special operations community. Looking back on that day in the mountains, Sarah knew that everything in her life had led to those critical seconds behind the M107. The shot had been perfect, but, more importantly, it had proven that dedication, preparation, and unwavering focus could overcome any challenge. As she continued her military career, that lesson would guide her through whatever missions and challenges lay ahead.